The Switch 2 era is upon us, and Nintendo's opening volley is none other than the latest and supposedly greatest in their insanely popular Mario Kart series, Mario Kart World. But after the remarkable combination of quality and sheer quantity that was Mario Kart 8 Deluxe after a decade of post-release editions, can Mario Kart World justify its own existence, an $80 price tag, and a new console purchase? Well, I've already taken that plunge, so hopefully I can help you answer those questions for yourself today. If you've played Mario Kart 8, or really any Mario Kart game in the past 2 decades, you'll be right at home with the basic controls of Mario Kart World. The classic drift-based gameplay is back and feels as smooth as ever. Where things differ as compared to its predecessors is in the gimmick portions of the tracks. Where Mario Kart 8 had underwater driving, gliding, and anti-gravity, Mario Kart World instead has jet skis, planes, and rail riding. While I do have a fondness for Mario Kart 8's trio of gimmicks, I must admit that Mario Kart Worlds complement each other to form a much more appreciably varied experience. The fact of the matter is that in Mario Kart 8, only gliding really fundamentally changed the actual gameplay. Underwater and anti-gravity gameplay really just served to allow for more interesting high-concept track designs. Fittingly, the most similar gimmick to the Mario Kart 8 equivalent here are the plane segments. The controls feel remarkably similar, though have been enhanced slightly with the ability to do tricks while flying in order to sharply change your trajectory in a sudden burst of speed. Certainly a welcome addition. Now as for the water sports, in Mario Kart World, you'll be floating across the surface of the water instead of driving down beneath it. Honestly, this may be the most improved of the gimmicks. Whereas Mario Kart 8's underwater sections just felt like normal Mario Kart with slightly altered physics, Mario Kart World's jet ski sections take full advantage of the medium of travel. The water's lower friction results in cornering and drifting that feels different from the controls on land. But wait, there's more. Many of the jet ski sections feature turbulent waters that allow for you to perform speed-boosting tricks off of the rolling, ever-changing waves. And even in calm waters, things can get interesting. You can do jumps on the water to create your own trick opportunities, and certain items can make waves. Literally. Which leaves us with rail and wall riding, along with the new charge jump. It's rare for there to be a whole section of a track that switches to be just a set of rails. Instead, rails are scattered all throughout the tracks, even in places you wouldn't expect. You see these rails? They're rails, but so are these guardrails, and these stems, and these power lines, and this castle wall, and these stadium barriers, and this dinosaur. Well, you get the idea. These rails can be shortcuts, altered routes to stack up coins and items, basically just laying in the middle of the regular track, or even longer, slower paths with no apparent benefit to taking them. But it's not all or nothing. You can hop on with a charge jump and hop off whenever you want, perhaps after building up a speed boost. They're a fun addition that adds a lot more ways to tackle track without increasing the footprint all that much, and have a very high skill ceiling to master. As you improve at the game, you can level up your rail riding skills to do crazier and crazier things with them. So yeah, it's a fun trio of gimmicks, but the real magic lies in how smoothly you can transition between them. On some of these tracks, you can go from driving to grinding to flying to floating in a matter of seconds. The designs often allow you to take your pick between several modes of transit for a given section of the track. It reminds me of that one awesome part of Thwomp Ruins from Mario Kart 8, but here you're presented with those sorts of situations all the time. But, speaking of tracks, let's talk about them as well as the world as a whole. If there are 2 new features that define Mario Kart World, it's the titular open world, and the newly increased racer count to 24 as opposed to the previous standard of 12. Let's start by touching on that. So, 24-person races. Is it actually better than 12, or is it just more for the sake of more? Honestly, it's a bit of column A, a bit of column B. In single player, it actually serves to make the Grand Prix easier. No matter how good you are at Mario Kart, you can always be knocked down a few places by some unfortunately timed items in the last spin of a race. In previous games, that could seriously hurt your chances at winning the cup, but here, the decline in points relative to placement is more gradual, meaning one bad race won't put you as far back as it would previously. But honestly, the overall single-player experience doesn't really feel too different even with the double racers, since the CPUs just aren't all that aggressive. Online multiplayer, on the other hand, let's just start with the basic mathematical fact that doubling the amount of players in a race halves your odds at winning said race. And yeah, I know it's not all about winning, but winning less can sour the multiplayer experience a bit for some. The changed player count also has some interesting effects on item balance. It's my experience so far that mushrooms are far more powerful than shells, and really most other items in this Mario Kart game. The reason for this, once again, is simple math. Let's suppose you have 3 red shells and successfully hit and pass 3 people with them. Back in Mario Kart 8, congratulations, you've passed a quarter of the race with that one move. Now in Mario Kart World, that same play results in you passing an eighth of the race. Or to put it in even starker terms, it has the same impact on the race as using one red shell did back in Mario Kart 64 or Double Dash. Mushrooms, on the other hand, allow you to pass several racers at once. They're especially broken during the intermission segments where you race between tracks because there are so many massive corners you can cut with them. I've routinely gone from around 20th place to the top 3 based on just one set of mushrooms. So then, the items, in particular offensive ones, aren't as impactful in this game. Well, no. It's a bit paradoxical, but despite the fact that throwing a shell feels so anemic when you're the one throwing it, when you're getting hit, they're downright oppressive. Or in other words, using items feels worse, but getting hit by them also somehow feels worse. Here's the deal, there are so many items flying around, especially in the middle of the pack, that sometimes this game feels more like playing slots than a racing game. And yeah, I know Mario Kart's always been a bit like that, but here it's just on another level. And I really think it comes down to the 24 player count, plus the fact that they've decided to bring back double item boxes. This has two detrimental effects. Firstly, it just straight up increases the amount of items out there. In theory, if everyone hits the double item box on a segment of track, that's 48 items that can be fired off between then and the next set of item boxes. And honestly, in my opinion, it's too much. But it also turns each set of item boxes into a rather unsatisfying game of chicken. Obviously, the doubles are most sought after, but if everyone goes for them, there won't be enough to go around. This means that at every set of item boxes, you've got to decide if you're going to risk going for the double or nothing, or just settle for a normal item box. I've had races where I've gotten no item for like 3 item box sets in a row due to losing that game of chicken. Now granted, I guess that's my fault for taking the risk, but with all the items flying around, you almost feel like you have to go for broke just to keep up. And all this adds together to make for very clumped together races. Seriously, I know it's always been a bit of a meme how you can get hit by an item in first place in Mario Kart and fall all the way to last, but historically that's usually been because you tend to get hit again and again and again. In Mario Kart World though, the racers are legitimately close enough together that getting hit literally once can take you from first to last, just about. Not just that, but since the item boxes are so routine, everyone is so close together, and the shortcuts are so powerful, it's extremely common for people to take first place on the back of a golden mushroom or bullet's bill. Now I guess on the one hand, that does give you the classic "the race isn't over till it's over" tone that Mario Kart tends to go for. But in normal online versus races, again, I think it's overtuned. Honestly, sometimes I think you're in a better position to win a race if you're in 20th going into the final lap than 5th. And the funny thing is, I think a lot of these issues would be solved if you didn't play the intermission segments in online play. So here's the deal, the way Mario Kart World's online lobbies work is that you play a race, then get a choice of a few usually adjacent tracks to vote on to race to from the previous track, and then go through for one lap. Now, there are things I like about the system. Firstly, it does allow for a greater variety of racetracks, because not only do you have all 30 tracks, but each one can be approached from usually about 5 to 9 different routes. It also gives you more grounding in your online lobbies and makes all of the tracks feel like a more cohesive world instead of just disparate video game levels. And I guess it also allows for extra strategy when voting, since you can vote for tracks geographically closest to the tracks you're best at to try to get a bit of an edge. But the system also has some key downsides. Firstly, Rainbow Road almost never comes up as a track option because it only has one route to it. Secondly, while I did say the system allows for extra variety given the quantity of possible routes, it also stifles variety because it's pretty easy to get caught in one geographic region for an extended time. Thirdly, you only race the actual tracks for one lap. Now you can race for 3 laps if a random or geographically distant track is selected. Okay, hello. That isn't actually true anymore. It was when I wrote this video, but Nintendo has since put out an extremely tone-deaf update that makes the random track selection usually pick an adjacent track with an intermission. So yeah, that's just great. But in my experience, those non-adjacent track options are pretty rare. And that's a shame because while the intermission sections are more interesting to drive than I feared they may have been pre-release, they're still not even close to the design quality of the actual tracks. Additionally, I think the intermission sections are part of the reason why these races are so clumped together. And frankly, it's because they're too easy. The corners are usually gentle, the obstacles are minimal, and the shortcuts are so extreme and so easy to take that basically anyone can catch up at any time. Usually the tracks themselves are where there actually starts being some separation between the placements, but since it's only one lap, it's sorta too late to be impactful. So yeah, overall, of the Mario Kart games I've extensively played online before, thus far, I'd have to put Mario Kart World as by far the least satisfying experience in versus races, mostly due to the overtuned items and overly simplistic intermission sections. Now, all that being said, I do think one simple update would likely improve the online experience significantly, which would be to allow you to play in a lobby that exclusively plays 3 laps of a track. Honestly, I see no reason this shouldn't happen at some point, but Nintendo does have a tendency to get stubborn about the stupidest little game design elements that they're married to for whatever reason. So, I wouldn't bet money on it. Future Steamcraft here again. Yeah, so the update with the random tracks really does reinforce this concern of Nintendo's stubbornness. For whatever reason, they seem hell-bent on making you play the intermissions online, and it really is to this game's massive detriment. I really hope they change course on this. And if they do, I'll pin a comment below stating as much. But if they don't, this online multiplayer is way less than it has the potential to be, unfortunately. But there are other online modes, like Battle Mode, which I've played a bit of. It's alright. There are only a couple modes, and the battle arenas aren't great, but it seems alright. I think probably better than Mario Kart 8's battle mode on release, at the very least. Though that's hardly a high bar. But you may not want to trust my opinion too much on this part. I've never really understood the appeal of battle mode in any Mario Kart game. And this one hasn't changed my mind, so there's that. But there's also Knockout Tour, which paradoxically completely justifies and entirely condemns the 24-player count races. Confused? So am I. Let's dive into it. Knockout Tour is a battle royale mode wherein 24 racers embark on a seamless cross-continental race broken up into 6 legs, with the bottom 4 racers being eliminated after each one. And I'll be honest, I don't really like the first 2 legs of these races. The items still feel overtuned, and everyone is so clumped together that you basically never feel safe from elimination no matter how well you've been racing. But as players are eliminated, as items become more scarce, and as racers have the time to actually separate from each other, all of a sudden you feel like you have some control over your destiny. You start actually being able to strategize with your items and really consider when would be the most impactful time to use them. Defensive items actually mean something. You can even get hit by a blue shell and not fall out at first. Now maybe I'm just a boring square who got used to Mario Kart 8 on the Wii U with its notoriously defensive item meta, but this sort of race to me is actually fun and by far the highlight of this whole package. Going all the way on one of these feels satisfying and substantial, and even if you get knocked out early, you can always just queue up for a new match, so no harm, no foul. Now as for critiques, there are too few rallies right now. I think there are only 8, which is odd considering how many plausible routes there are through the world map. Maybe these are the only interesting ones, or maybe they'll add more in future updates. Additionally, I think it would be nice if you played 3 laps on the final track instead of just 1. As it stands right now, especially if the rally ends on one of the shorter tracks, the final leg can feel a bit anticlimactic. But this is something that I don't imagine they're likely to change, unfortunately. In any case, this mode is where you want to be, in my opinion. Now, as for other elements of this game, I should certainly at least mention the open world. Honestly, for the average player, the most impactful thing it does might be give you a more entertaining online multiplayer lobby, since you can drive around in it while waiting for your next race. As for actually just exploring the open world, it's more satisfying than I thought it'd be. There are a lot of little things to collect and bespoke challenges to attempt. It's also just interesting to explore on these tracks without all the racing barriers in place. Overall, it's a fun experience that I've enjoyed partaking in, but not one that I feel calling for me to return on the regular. And to wrap things up here, there's a few other miscellaneous items to go over. The customizable carts from Mario Kart 7 are gone, which I don't really miss all that much. I guess it gives you less opportunity for customization in your stats, but at least all the carts are visually coherent now. The character roster is interesting, to say the least. If you like racing as A-list Mario characters, then you're in for a treat, as most of them have half a dozen or so alternate outfits to play with. On the other extreme, if you love playing as total oddballs, Mario Kart World has you covered there too. It seems like basically any Mario enemy can somehow procure a license to drive now, though a lot of them seem to have been really low effort additions to the cast. Like, some of them literally don't have arms, so I get them not having super coherent driving animations, but then you see a crab just T-posing on a bike, and you wonder how this was allowed in an $80 flagship Nintendo game. Additionally though, the middle tier of characters have really been hit. Gone are Funky Kong, the Koopalings, Diddy Kong, Petey Prawn, and the like. A lot of sort of mid-tier Mario characters have gotten the axe here, which may annoy you significantly if those are the types of characters you like to play. But yeah, that's Mario Kart World for you. It's a meaningfully different enough experience from previous Mario Kart games to justify its existence, but unlike 8 Deluxe, which became far and away the definitive Mario Kart experience, Mario Kart World more so makes a lot of lateral changes, which your enjoyment of will in large part come down to personal preference. But the big thing hurting this game is the fact that they have so thoroughly botched the online experience. In terms of my recommendation, unless you're a die-hard Mario Kart fan, I wouldn't recommend rushing out to buy a Switch 2 just for Mario Kart World. In fact, I might recommend waiting to see what sort of post-launch support Nintendo has planned for the title before making a decision. Like I said, a lot of my biggest issues with Mario Kart World, mostly the disappointing online implementation, could be solved with just a couple extra online mode options, which could easily be patched in later. Hey, Future Seamicraft here again. As I previously interjected, so far this hope has not planned out. In fact, Nintendo's doubling down on the problems with their design, rather than remedying them. Again, I'll be pinning a comment if they change course, but for now there's no sign that they're actually going to address the issues with the online as it stands. Honestly, right now, if you're just looking for the best racing experience available on Switch 2, in my opinion, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe still has the edge. But if you've been playing that game for the last decade, like I have, and are ready to try out the fresh new entry in the series, it's a well-produced package with some interesting ideas that can appeal as a chaotically competitive online multiplayer experience, a fun local multiplayer game to pull out with friends, and even as a sort of cozy, exploration-focused driving game. So yeah, that's Mario Kart World for you. I hope you found this video helpful and or entertaining. If you did, be sure to subscribe, because we've got more Mario Kart World videos coming out soon, as well as general Switch 2 coverage. All that is made possible thanks in part to my patrons like these folks on screen, especially my $15 tier patrons, Alex Oxling, Ashford Says, and Essex. But anyways, until next time, I've been Seamicraft, and I'll catch you in the next video. Goodbye.